Welcome, dear listener. You found a peaceful place where history whispers through the quiet of the night. As the world winds down, let timeless stories unfold, gently guiding you to rest. Settle in, breathe deeply, and allow the past to soothe your present. This journey begins with calm. In the northern reaches of the Scottish Highlands, beneath skies of shifting grey and soft golden light, lies a long, shadowed body of water. Loch Ness, a name that stirs wonder in the curious and caution in the old. It is a lake that stretches 23 miles, narrow and deep, slicing through the earth like a quiet secret. Its waters are cold, dark, and peat-stained nearly black beneath the surface. So dark, in fact, that even light surrenders just a few meters down. They say you could lower a flashlight into its depths and see nothing but black after only a short descent. It is not the largest loch in Scotland by surface, but it holds more water than all of England and Wales's lakes combined. A glacial trench from an age long past, ancient and still. Even when the wind dies down and the tourists go quiet, something about Loch Ness always stirs the imagination. The surface may seem still, but deep beneath, in the heart of that cold abyss, legends have rippled outward for centuries. This is a land shaped by time and by myth. Rolling hills cradle the loch like sleeping giants. Mists drift low across the water in the early morning, casting everything in a veil of silver. Trees along the shore stand like silent witnesses to centuries of whispers, sightings, and suspicions. At dusk, the bird song softens, the chill returns. The loch never sleeps, it waits. Perhaps tonight, something ancient will stir beneath the surface. Or perhaps it's already watching, from the shadows, from the depths, or maybe from our dreams. Long before the world knew the name Nessie, long before there were photographs, sonar scans, or newspapers filled with whispers from the Loch, there were stories. Old stories, older than memory. Scotland is a land carved by ancient forces be wind, water, and the quiet persistence of time. But it is also a land of myth, of beings half seen, of spirits both revered and feared. The people who once roamed these hills, Celts, Druids, Picts, they lived close to nature and closer still to the unseen. They told tales of beings who lived in rivers and lochs. They told of Kelpies, dark, shape-shifting spirits said to dwell in the depths of Scotland's waters. Kelpies were no ordinary beasts. They could appear as sleek black horses, wet and glistening with lake water, standing alone near the banks tempting travelers to climb upon their backs. And if you did, the creature would bolt, galloping down into the loch with the rider trapped upon its slick, enchanted hide never to be seen again. Other stories spoke of water horses with glowing eyes, or beautiful maidens with long dark hair, calling to lonely wanderers with voices like wind through reeds. Some say these spirits were guardians of the lochs. Others believed they were warnings, echoes of ancient caution. Whatever they were never to be trusted. Over time, these legends flowed like the streams that fed Loch Ness down through generations, passed in whispers by hearth and firelight. Parents would tell their children, "Don't go near the water alone, or the Kelpie will take you." There are even carvings on stones near the loch, etched by the Picts over 1,000 years ago. One particular shows a strange creature serpentine, long-necked, unlike anything known to natural history. Some believe it was a Kelpie. Others say it was something else, something older. Was it just myth, a reflection of the deep human need to explain the mysteries of nature? Or were those legends memories, passed down like echoes, distorted across centuries, until what once was real became wrapped in story? Loch Ness has always been a keeper of tales, and before science gave us names for its shadows, our ancestors gave them meaning. They gave them form, and they gave them fear. Let us drift back now, not just centuries but millennia, to a time when the misty highlands were cloaked in ancient forests and the Christian faith was only beginning to spread across the wild north of Scotland. It is the year 565 AD, and the story begins with a monk. His name was Columba, a holy man of Ireland, who traveled across the sea to bring peace, prayer, and the word of God to the pagan tribes of Caledonia, what we now call Scotland. Columba's life would become legend, but one event, in particular, has echoed through time more than any other. It is preserved in the writings of his biographer Adamnan, who penned his account a century later. It was on the banks of the river Ness, the channel that flows from Loch Ness to the sea, that Columba and his companions came upon a group of men in great distress. They were burying a friend. One of their own had been swimming across the river when sudden something rose from the water. A beast, dark, powerful, thrashing. It dragged the man beneath the surface before their eyes. The monster was still in the water. Columba, calm and resolute, sent one of his own followers to swim across the river. The men protested, afraid, but the monk insisted. The swimmer obeyed, moving cautiously into the current. As he reached the middle of the river, the creature rose once more. Black and terrible, it surged toward the man like a dark, wave-hungry, relentless. But Columba raised his hand. He made the sign of the cross. And with a voice that rang across the waters, he commanded the beast to go no further, to return, to disturb the man no more. And so it did. The creature stopped and fled. The locals stood in awe. The river stilled. The swimmer reached the far bank unharmed. To them, it was a miracle. To us, centuries later, it is something else. The first written record of a mysterious creature dwelling in the waters of Loch Ness, was it simply a parable of faith triumphing over darkness, or the earliest glimpse of a story that would ripple across generations? No one can say for certain, but what we do know is that from this moment forward, the legend of the Loch Ness creature had found its voice. For more than 1,000 years, the waters of Loch Ness held their silence. Stories passed in whispers, in fireside tales, in the cautious glances of fishermen who said little but watched much. But then, in the year 1933, the monster woke again, or rather the world began to listen. It started with a road, a new one freshly paved, hugging the northern shoreline of the loch. It gave visitors a clear view of the dark, still waters, and with it came eyes, curious eyes, watching eyes, and soon startled eyes. One warm April afternoon, a couple was driving that road near Inverfarigeg. From the car window they saw something moving across the loch's surface large, dark and undulating. They described it as a tremendous upheaval, as if something enormous were rolling through the water. The story caught fire. The local newspaper, the Inverness Courier, ran the headline, "Strange Spectacle on Loch Ness." And with those words, the legend was reborn. More sightings followed. Fishermen, tourists, and even gamekeepers came forward. Each with their own accounts. Some described a long neck, others a massive body, or a wake too large to explain. Within months, the loch was no longer just a place of beauty. It was a mystery. Reporters arrived. So did crowds, with binoculars, sketch pads, and cameras poised for the extraordinary. Some pitched tents on the shore. Others rode out into the mist, hoping for a glimpse or a story to take home. By December 1933, the Daily Mail, a major London newspaper, dispatched a big-game hunter named Marmaduke Wetherell to investigate. He returned with what he claimed were giant footprints, pressed into the loch's muddy bank. Experts rushed to examine them, but excitement turned to disappointment when they discovered they were made using a hippopotamus foot umbrella stand-a hoax. Still, the genie was out. A creature had been seen and believed. Whether real or imagined, the Loch Ness Monster was no longer a secret, it was a sensation. Cameras pointed toward the water now. Every ripple, every shadow, every unexplained splash was magnified by the lenses of fascination. The world had changed, and with it the way we told stories. Where once myths lived in stone carvings and whispered songs, now they danced across headlines printed, sold, and passed from hand to hand like fire. Loch Ness had become a stage, and the monster? Its most famous performé, there is a photograph, one image, grainy, black and white, blurred by age, by mist, by time itself, and yet it became the most famous depiction of the Loch Ness monster ever taken. It captivated the world, and for decades it stood unchallenged proof for many that something truly lived beneath those still dark waters. It came to be known as the surgeon's photograph. The year was 1934, just one season after the flurry of headlines that awoke public curiosity. A London gynecologist named Robert Kenneth Wilson claimed he had taken the photo while visiting the Loch on holiday. He did not want fame, he said, which only made the image more believable. Published in the Daily Mail on April 21st, 1934, the photograph showed something unmistakable. A long, sinuous neck rising from the water, a small head atop it, curved and serpentine. The body was unseen, submerged in the loch's blackness, but the shape above the surface was all it took. The world gasped. For many, this was no longer just myth. This was evidence. The photo became legend. It was reprinted in magazines, newspapers, books, encyclopedias. It was studied, admired, debated. For over half a century, it was the crown jewel of Nessie lore. But time, like the waters of the Loch, has a way of revealing what lies beneath. In 1994, 60 years after the image appeared, the story emerged. A man named Christian Sperling, on his deathbed, made a quiet confession. He said the photo was a hoax, a revenge carefully orchestrated by his stepfather, Marmaduke Wetherell, the same big game hunter once humiliated by the exposure of fake footprints the year before. Wetherell, Sperling said, had been mocked by the Daily Mail, so he plotted retaliation. They built a model of small creature's head and neck mounted atop a toy submarine. They placed it in the water, photographed it from afar, and convinced Wilson, the respected surgeon, to lend his name for credibility. And it worked. The model, they said, was less than 2 feet long. In the end, the photo that had mesmerized the world was no more than a child's decoy, dressed in fog and hope. But even in knowing the truth, something lingers. Because the image, however, false gave shape to a mystery that had lived for centuries. It stirred imaginations. It brought people to the shores. It made the unseen feel real, if only for a moment. And perhaps that is the greatest power of myth. To live, not in fact, but in feeling. To exist, not because we know it's real, but because we wish it could be. For every photograph, there are hundreds of stories. Some whispered, some shouted in excitement, some held in silence for years, afraid of ridicule, but always, always spoken with a kind of awe. These are the voices of Loch Ness, those who say they saw something. And though their words differ, they share one truth. They believe what they saw. In the summer of 1955, a woman named Constance White compiled many of these stories in her book More Than a Legend. She gave them space, dignity. She reminded the world that behind every headline was a human being gazing out over the water and seeing something they could not explain. One of the earliest voices belonged to A.H. Palmer, a boy at the time. He spoke of a creature about 7 feet long, seen from the garden of his home near the loch. It had a giraffe-like neck, he said. It moved in slow, deliberate arches. Then there was Lieutenant Commander Rupert T. Gould, a former British naval officer who investigated sightings with military precision. He interviewed dozens of witness-struck drivers, local clergy, fishermen, and described their consistency as remarkable. In 1960, a man named Tim Dinsdale, an aeronautical engineer, filmed something moving across the loch. It was a reddish hump, gliding steadily before vanishing beneath the surface. Experts reviewed the film. Some said it was a boat, others swore it wasn't. But Dinsdale believed, and he spent the rest of his life chasing the truth. Even in recent times, The sightings continue. A local hotel manager in 1996 reported a shape with a long neck gliding silently across the loch before disappearing in a swirl of water. In 2007, a tourist captured a video of a dark object moving beneath the surface for minutes. The shape was too long for a seal, too fluid for a boat, and in 2014, Apple's satellite maps of Loch Ness showed a long shadow underwater, strange, sleek, and suggestive. Was it real? Was it illusion? Each story, by itself, is easy to dismiss. A trick of the light, a wave, a log, a bird in flight. But together, they form a tapestry, a kind of collective dream stitched by dozens, even hundreds of hands. From retired school teachers to skeptical scientists, from hikers on the cliffs to children playing by the shore, they looked out and saw something, and when they speak of it, they don't speak with fear. They speak with wonder, as if, in that one moment brief, as it may have been, the world was more magical than they had believed. Legends may live in stories, but proof requires search. And so, over the years, some chose not to watch from the shore, but to go out onto the loch itself, to drift above its dark heart with instruments in hand and questions in mind. This is the story of the search, of sonar, of submarines, of science brushing fingertips with folklore. In the quiet dawn of 1962, a group of naturalists, divers, and engineers formed the Loch Ness Investigation Bureau, or LNIB. They camped on the shores with cameras mounted on tripods. They watched the loch in rotating shifts. Weeks passed, sometimes months. Occasionally, they caught a wake, a splash. Once, a long shape gliding through the water, too distant to confirm, but they believed. Enough to return again and again. Then came 1972, a team from the Academy of Applied Science, led by Dr. Robert Rines, arrived with sonar equipment and an underwater camera. That year, something strange happened. They captured an image, blurry but haunting. It seemed to show a flipper diamond-shaped enormous, nothing that matched known aquatic life in the loch. Could it be a plesiosaur, some ancient marine creature, long thought extinct? Or was it once again a trick of light and longing? They returned again in 1975, capturing more images, shapes, shadows, a body, a head. Each photo fed hope and doubt. Scientists debated. Photographic experts raised concerns, but the mystery endured. In 1987, technology took a leap forward. It was called Operation Deep Scan, a coordinated sonar sweep across the loch, the largest of its kind. 24 boats lined up, moving in perfect unison, scanning every depth, every echo. The loch remained largely silent, but not entirely. 3 unexplained sonar contacts were recorded, large, moving targets deep beneath the surface. They didn't match known fish, but they never surfaced, never showed themselves. They came, they went, like ghosts. Later expeditions would follow, each one better equipped. Multibeam sonar, underwater microphones, satellite imaging, even robotic submersibles. But always the result was the same. Possibilities, maybes, glimpses, and yet there's something poetic in that. The way we keep searching decade after decade, not just for a creature, but for a connection to something greater, something ancient, something we haven't yet named. Science may not have found the monster, but it has helped us see the loch more clearly. Its layers, its secrets, its quiet refusal to be fully known. Loch Ness may be the most famous, but it is not alone. Across this wide and ancient world, from the snowy reaches of Canada to the still waters of Africa, legends echo across lakes and rivers, different names, different shapes, but always the same quiet question. What swims beneath? Let us begin in the forests of British Columbia. There lives a legend named Ogopogothi, guardian of Lake Okanagan. Indigenous stories tell of a serpentine being long and smooth, with humps that rise and fall across the surface like waves come to life. The Silix people once offered prayers and respect when crossing the lake, believing the creature wasn't just real, but sacred. Modern sightings persist. Fishermen, tourists, campers on the shore. Each year, new stories join the old. Thousands of miles away, in the deep waters of Lake Champlain, on the border of New York and Vermont, lives Champa creature with a long neck, like Nessie, often seen just before the fog rolls in. In Lake Tianchi, China speaks of a dragon-like being that locals call the Tianchi monster, said to travel in groups, sleek and black, stirring the volcanic waters. In Iceland, in Lake Lagarfljót, legends tell of the Lagarfljót worm, a creature sometimes described as enormous, pale, and coiled. Locals say it appears when danger is near, a harbinger cloaked in mist. In Africa, Lake Malawi holds tales of Mokele Mbembe, a creature that walks as well as swims, sometimes said to resemble a sauropod dinosaur, like a relic from the dawn of time. All over the world, humans have stood beside water and stared into the depths, seeing what they could not explain, naming what they could not catch. We are a storytelling species. We reach for meaning where reason cannot quite go. Some say these monsters are real undiscovered species from another age, survivors hiding where few dare to look. Others say they are projections, dreams, the mind giving shape to a ripple, a shadow, a wave. But maybe they are something in between. Memories, archetypes, shared dreams passed down across cultures, different languages, same shape, long neck, humpbacked, mysterious. Perhaps Nessie is not a creature at all, but part of a worldwide Longinga quiet wish that our planet still holds secrets waiting to be discovered. And perhaps when we gaze into the waters of Loch Ness, we are seeing not just one monster, but all of them. For all the wonder, for all the stories told beneath starlight, there are those who ask the harder questions. They sit quietly with their notebooks, their instruments, their logic, and they ask not to spoil the magic, but to understand it, to separate the ripples from the waves, the story from the shape. These are the skeptics. And their voices, too, belong to the tale. One of the earliest and most common explanations is a simple one: driftwood. Loch Ness is surrounded by dense pine forests. Storms often sweep fallen branches into the water. As they soak, they swell and sink, then later rise again, slick and smooth, bobbing like something alive. From a distance through mist, and move in such shapes can fool the eye. Others point to otters. When swimming in a line, their arched backs create a natural illusion, a series of humps, breaking and rejoining the surface like a single serpent-like creature. In the play of light and distance, our minds do the rest. Then there are the Seiche's natural standing waves that form in large enclosed bodies of water. Though invisible to the eye, they can cause sudden surface disturbances, unexplained ripples, odd splashes, even entire swells. To someone watching, it might feel like something just moved beneath the loch. Birds, too, have played their part. Cormorants, known for sitting low in the water, create sleek, silent profiles as they glide. From far away, they can seem large, even monstrous. And sometimes it's simply a boat seen from an odd angle distorted by the shimmering surface. And yet, even among scientists, there is a quiet acknowledgement: some sightings do not fit. Some sonar readings go unexplained. Some images defy quick dismissal. And so the skeptics continue not to deny the mystery, but to chase it differently. Through evidence, through measurements, through questions, because sometimes truth is even more beautiful when it arrives slowly like a fog lifting at sunrise. The skeptics do not always say, "There is nothing here." Often they say, "We do not know yet." And in that pausing, that space between doubt and belief, something very human lives, a balance between what we can prove And but we still wonder. Not every monster brings fear. Some bring visitors, curiosity, smiles, and in the little towns that nestle around the dark waters of Loch Ness, the legend of the creature has done more than stir the imagination. It has built livelihoods, drive along the quiet roads that wind through the Scottish Highlands, and you'll find signs pointing to Drumnadrochit, Invermoriston, and Fort Augustus, small villages tucked against the loch like stones around a sleeping fire. And in each one you'll see signs of Nessie in carved wooden statues near gift shops, in smiling plush toys sitting on souvenir shelves, in boat tours promising mystery and mist, sonar scans and hopeful eyes. The town of Drumnadrochit, perhaps more than any other, has embraced the legend. Here stands the Loch Ness Center exhibition, housed in a converted hotel. Inside, visitors wander through the history of the legend sightings, science, hoaxes, and hope told with gentle honesty. Just outside, cafes offer warm soup and hot tea to travelers drawn not by proof, but by possibility. Hotels proudly boast rooms with a view of the loch, and local guides, many raised by the water's edge, tell stories passed down from their grandparents each tale, wrapped in laughter and wonder. Every year, thousands arrive from America, Japan, Germany, Brazil. Some come with binoculars, some come with stories from childhood, some come just to see the place where magic still feels possible. And while they search the water, they also fill the inns, the shops, the bakeries. The legend has given something rare to this quiet corner of the Highlands. Sustainability, a mystery turned into a blessing. And the locals, they know the truth. Not whether Nessie is real, but that she matters. She brings the world to their doorstep. She connects strangers through shared curiosity. She keeps their stories alive. And in the hush of early morning, when the mist clings to the hills and the loch lies still, even they glance out sometimes, just in case, from deep within a lonely loch to the bright lights of movie screens, from ancient Celtic carvings to coloring books and bedtime tales. Few creatures, real or imagined, have traveled as far as the Loch Ness Monster. We call her Nessie now, a name spoken not with fear, but fondness. And in doing so, we've turned a mystery into something strangely comforting. A friend from the depths, Nessie made her way into popular culture quietly at first, through whispered newsreels, through grainy images printed in Sunday magazines. But then the stories began to change. They became playful, gentle. In 1975, the film The Private Life of Sherlock Holmes imagined Nessie as a misunderstood sea creature, glimpsed through fog and secrecy, and by the 1980s, Nessie had become a character in her own right, appearing in cartoons and animated films, often as kind-hearted, curious, and just a little shy. She showed up in children's books with round eyes and smiling teeth, her long neck curled protectively around small boats and friendly birds. No longer a threat, but a wonder. In 1977, the mockumentary The Mysterious Monsters used dramatic narration and spooky music to dive into Nessie, lorecementing her as a key figure in the golden age of cryptid fascination. And in modern times, she appears in everything from Scooby-Doo episodes to Pokemon references. There are Nessie-shaped tea infusers, Nessie-themed board games, and Nessie plush dolls clutched tightly in the arms of children who've never even heard of the Highlands but who believe in her all the same. But it's not just entertainment. Nessie has become a symbol of the unexplained, of the balance between fear and friendship, of a creature who lives just out of sight but always close to the heart. And in a world growing ever more digital, ever more explained, she remains a reminder of imagination, of wonder, of mystery that doesn't need solving to be meaningful. So whether she's starring in a feature film or peeking out from behind a mountain in a picture book, Nessie swims not just through the loch, but through us. Through the stories we share, the drawings we make, and the quiet wish that there's still something out there waiting to be found. The loch is deep, over 750 feet, at its darkest point so deep that the light disappears within moments of entering. And in many ways, so do our certainties, because Loch Ness is not just a place on a map, it's a mirror reflecting something far more mysterious than any creature. It reflects us. We doivent believe. Why do some of us, even the skeptical ones, still glance over our shoulders when standing by deep water? Why do children, barely tall enough to see over the railing of a tour boat, whisper, "Do you think Nessie's down there," and mean it? Maybe because we need her to be. We live in a world of facts, of data and diagrams, of satellites and search engines. So much of the world has been mapped, measured, explained, and yet something in us resists the idea that everything has already been found. We long for the possibility that there are still mysteries left, secrets kept, shadows that haven't been brought fully into the light. Believing in Nessie isn't always about proof. It's about permission. Permission to wonder, to imagine a world where the ancient still lives, where magic isn't gone just sleeping, where nature still holds stories it hasn't told us. Psychologists have studied this longing. They say it's part of our evolutionary need to find patterns, to see meaning in shapes, to turn the unknown into something knowable. But it's more than that. It's hope. It's the same instinct that draws us to stories, to dreams, to the stars. And so we gather at the edges of deep water, not just at Loch Ness, but in every lake, every forest, every legend-touched place. And we ask, could it be true? Because to believe in Nessie, even just a little, is to believe that the world is still surprising, that there are still chapters to be written, that the book of nature hasn't closed. Not yet. The legends are old, the sightings centuries long, but the tools we use to understand the Loch have changed. We no longer rely only on our eyes or on shadows in photographs. Today, we turn to something far smaller, something that drifts unseen in every drop of water, DNA. In 2018, a team of international scientists led by Professor Neil Gemmell from New Zealand arrived at Loch Ness with a new idea. What if, rather than searching for the monster, we search for its traces? Every creature, large or small, leaves behind microscopic fragments of itself in the water. Skin cells, escales, feathers, even waste. This is called environmental DNA, or eDNA technique, that allows scientists to catalog the life in a body of water without ever seeing the creatures themselves. They collected 250 water samples from different depths and locations across Loch Ness. They filtered them, centrifuged them, mapped the genetic material hidden inside. What they found was a detailed portrait of life in the loch. Dozens of fish species, birds, mammals, even microscopic plankton long undisturbed. But they did not find any evidence of plesiosaurs or large reptiles or anything resembling the prehistoric theories that had swirled through Nessie lore. Yet there was one finding that surprised them: a high volume of DNA from eel species, specifically European eels. Eels do live in the loch, but their numbers and their size were notable. Could a particularly large eel swimming near the surface be mistaken for a monster? It's possible. But even that is not the final word, because DNA can tell us what's there, but not always how big, or how it moves, or how it might appear when seen through morning mist, or the eyes of wonder. Professor Gemmell himself was careful not to debunk. "We can't find any evidence of a monster," he said gently. "But we also can't prove that something extraordinary isn't there. And in that space between the molecules, between what is known and what is yet to be found, The legend breathes on. So, is she real? That's the question, isn't it? The one whispered on the boat tours, scribbled in notebooks by scientists, printed across headlines, and whispered into the ears of wide-eyed children. Is the Loch Ness monster real? We followed her shadow through ancient carvings, through saintly miracles, through grainy photos and sonar scans and DNA strands. We've chased her across books, cartoons, expeditions, and cafe windows. And still, the answer remains just out of reach, like something stirring beneath dark water just below the surface. Some say no. They point to hoaxes, to misidentifications, to the science which finds no reptilian monster hiding in the deep. They say it's a log, a wave, a dream. But others say yes. They've seen something they cannot explain. And they say it with eyes full of memory, of mystery, of meaning. Perhaps the truth lies somewhere in between. Not in the photograph, not even in the water, but in the space between hope and doubt. That sacred space where stories live, where the heart, not the eyes, does the seeing. Because belief doesn't always require evidence. Sometimes it simply requires longing, and we long for things that defy explanation, for creatures that survive what they shouldn't, for lakes that keep secrets, for the idea that magic didn't leave with the old gods but simply settled somewhere quiet and deep, like Loch Ness. So is Nessie real? You'll have to decide that for yourself. But maybe, just maybe, it doesn't matter whether she is. Maybe what matters is that we're still asking, still wondering, still watching the Loch long after sunset, just in case the surface breaks. And something ancient rises, night falls on Loch Ness. The hills are hushed, the sky, once pale, has deepened into indigo layered with stars like scattered thoughts too delicate to hold. The water, still as breath, reflects the moon as if holding it gently in its hands. All is quiet now. The questions have been asked, the stories told, the wonder stirred like mist rising from the surface. Somewhere out there a boat drifts, empty but rocking. Its lantern flickers, casting golden circles onto the dark water. In the distance, a ripple moves, slow and smooth. But maybe it's just a current, or maybe it isn't. You are here now, resting on the edge of something ancient. The loch stretches before you like a great black mirror holding time, and myth and memory. You close your eyes, you listen, not just for splashes, or strange cries, or distant wakes, but for something older, a heartbeat in the deep, a presence, a promise. The world moves quickly beyond these hills. But here, things move as they always have. Slow, gentle, wrapped in fog and silence. And somewhere in that silence, the legend sleeps, not dead, not gone, just resting, like the loch itself waiting for the morning mist to rise once more. So sleep now, drift as the water drifts. Let the stillness of Loch Ness carry you. Let the stories become dreams. Let the questions wait, and if, in the quiet spaces between sleep and waking, you hear something stir, a distant splash, a slow ripple, a glimpse of something too large for the mind to hold, don't be afraid. You've simply returned to the loch, and perhaps so has she.